directly above the Hollywood sign, it's ChrenBen's Friend Trends with Aaron Crennan and Ben Lepley, the working model of a healthy friendship.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us on the ChrenBen's Friend Trends podcast. My name's Aaron Crennan, and I'm alongside my best friend, Ben Lepley. How you doing, Ben?
Feeling fine, because I'm next to my best friend, Aaron Crennan.
Who, me?
Yes, you.
Aw, Ben. Well, we're also alongside our friend, Daniel Robbins. How you doing, Daniel?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Oh, feeling fine. Next to my best friend, Aaron Crennan.
And I was doing a lot better before you got here, so Daniel, please exit.
Okay. End of podcast.
We told you, 28 seconds. That's it.
Great.
It's a lot of intro.
I'm expecting my check in the mail. I'll see you guys soon.
I should explain to the listening audience at home, Daniel is dressed in a paisley shirt.
Yeah, it's sort of a mustard-colored, tan-colored paisley shirt.
And it's button-up, short sleeve, and his hair is medium length, and he came in just like super relaxed and in a good mood, and he has the aura of like a really cool 70s guy that you'd want to just hang out with in that decade. So try to picture that while we're talking.
Cool. Yeah, I took a nap before I came here.
That's the type of vibe. We're gonna put some nice bed rest music underneath this.
Bed rest music.
It's for when you
for the hospital.
Broken your hip and you can't go anywhere.
I think you're confused about what I was trying to get at. See, I said
like spa music.
I said like in bed while resting.
I see.
Oh.
So you don't know what bed rest is.
I do not. Anyone wanna? You said a broken ankle. Is that it? So when you have a broken ankle, you put on some bed rest music to hurry up the healing process.
Exactly.
Interesting. Holistic, possibly.
Really quick too. I'm kind of noticing this as we've been talking. Daniel seems very 70s. I have my hair slicked back. I've been doing that lately, and I'm in actually kind of a tight fitting button-up dress shirt with long sleeves and slacks because I came from work, and Aaron is in like kind of a hip t-shirt and jeans, so I feel like we've got 70s, 80s, and 90s. And also your hair is gelled, Aaron, and you just got it cut so it's kind of short and spiky in the front. So
right.
I feel like we've got those 3 decades covered.
We nailed it.
Yeah. And we didn't even talk about this.
For not planning, we really couldn't have done this any better.
Well, I'm happy.
Of course you are, you 70s junkie.
I'm the 70s.
Hey,
guys.
try not to fall asleep during this podcast, please.
Could we try to like personify the respective drugs of our decades? Like I'll be really like amped up on coke, and actually, what was horse tranquilizers for the 90s?
It'd be like Oxy or...
Yeah, it'd be Oxy or like a rave drug.
Ecstasy, maybe. Or was that too now? I guess I don't really know.
I'd say ecstasy is 2000s. I could be completely wrong about that, as I've never done drugs.
Oh, wait. When did meth get big?
Oh,
I think I might be meth guys.
I think 2000s.
Yeah, that's 2000s.
Big.
What about, Daniel, what's at raves? It's in balloons. Is it hydrogen that people breathe in?
Helium?
No,
wait, the people what?
Not for funny voices. Like, have you guys ever seen a rave movie where it's like in the 90s rave and people have balloons and it's filled with a kind of gas, nitrous oxide.
Yeah.
So Aaron, just pretend you're high on nitrous oxide for this podcast. I'll let you decide what that means.
I think that's a lot like what I already am. So you're gonna get a lot of that, but try to believe it if you could.
And I'll be on opium.
There you go.
For the 70s.
Does that make you happy or sleepy, or what does that do?
I won't say a thing for the rest of this podcast. So.
You just hear the microphone at the couch. Oh my God.
Great.
I kind of want you to continue that bit.
What if I really did
committed for the whole thing?
You know that breath in noise we just heard? It sounds a lot like bed rest music.
That's bed rest music.
That's what I was mentally...
the sound of people inhaling slowly. Well, before we hit record, we were talking a little bit about some of the worst auditions we had ever had. And I was thinking about it's kind of a story to tell tonight, but the discussion we had sparked an entirely new story, so I'm gonna do 180 and go a different direction. When I was first getting started auditioning for commercials, mean, I still feel like to a degree I have no idea what I'm doing, but back then especially so. And because we all do improvisation, it's that kind of a podcast, gross LA improvers podcast, or improvisers.
Might have to change the name.
Yeah. I get sent out a lot for improv auditions. So there was this one, and I won't say the product because I don't want anyone to get in trouble.
Oreos.
Yeah. I want to continue with this story as though it's Oreos, even though it is an alcohol brand. Supplement it with Oreos.
So I was drinking a bunch of Oreos.
Yeah.
And
nice, cool glass.
Smirnoff's Oreo vodka.
So this product, it's a popular beer, and the whole audition. This is probably like my third or fourth audition that I ever went out on. So clueless. And the whole thing was improvised. And the idea was that if you won this trip that this beer company was putting out, they would send you on a cruise to an island where there would be a concert and a big party. And then you would take a cruise back to the mainland and they'd fly you home. So the entire audition, as it was explained to us in the lobby, which is a business term for those of you who aren't familiar with Hollywood, was, just here are the 4 scenes that you're describing to your friends. So you're all sitting around a table, and you're just going to talk about it was the best thing ever. Like, we went on the cruise ship, and then just improvise a moment of what happened on the cruise ship and make it realistic. We met some babes, or, we gambled. I don't know.
Some chicas.
What if they said that in the lobby? Mm-hmm. Try to incorporate the word chicas. And then the second beat was then you get to this island and you're on the beach. So have a moment on the beach. We saw some chicas in the sand.
It's always the same. We saw some girls, and
actually, as I'm telling this, I feel like every beat they described was do something fun, you see some girls. Then you get to the bar and say something fun, hey, there's some girls. So, and then the third beat was you go to the concert and you have the beer. The beer is there, and it's a crazy concert, and you make up the name of the band, or use a real band, just you decide. And then the last beat is you come back on the cruise ship and have another beat on the cruise ship.
It's a real choose your own adventure. I mean,
yeah, you do. You choose the adventure that you'd want to have with this beer company.
So it was a real loose script.
Yeah, super loose.
So they basically came out and said, all right, guys, so we don't have anything for you guys to do. Just incorporate chicks and a cruise.
Janelle here just got back from a 3-day in the Bahamas, so we're thinking maybe a cruise. The guys, yeah, a cruise. Okay,
that's great.
Janelle, what do you think? Well, I loved my cruise, so like I said, that's what I want to see.
Cruise it is.
This ad agency executive.
I want to see a cruise.
Who is this man?
I want to see my bottle of alcohol on a cruise.
Is it the owner of the beer company at this first round of auditions?
An alcoholic beverage.
Deciding.
That was it.
I love it. So we go in, and I'm super nervous. And I should say too, the whole point of this is that everybody's sitting around the table. I don't think they even were watching this with sound. I think the whole thing was you're just supposed to be blabbing on about this stuff, and then they were really filming the reactions of the people sitting at your table, and they were supposed to sit there and look jealous, but not too jealous because we don't want the product to look bad. So it was more about the 3 friends sitting at the table with you, listening to your story. So it's deemed that I'm going to be the one to talk, and we sit down and we have our empty plastic glasses that are supposed to have beer in them, and they're like, okay, just go for it when you're ready. And so I'm like, okay, so I won this trip. I couldn't believe it. I got flown down to this cruise ship, and it was crazy. The cruise ship went out, and the whole time they were playing Billy Ocean. You remember that song, Caribbean Queen by Billy Ocean? Caribbean Queen. It's just, I don't know why I remember that. It really got stuck in my head. So, and then we went to the beach and blah, blah, blah. So,
met some girls.
Yeah, met some chicas and the concert and so on and so forth. And then when we got, it was pretty straightforward after that weird Billy Ocean beat. And in all honesty, I do not remember why I did that. I don't remember why my brain went there. I didn't hear it on the radio coming in. I didn't I like Billy Ocean. I have a greatest hits album of his in my my CD, like a canvas book of CDs upstairs, but like I hadn't listened to it recently. So I don't know where it came from, but it just sort of popped in. Maybe the thought of being out on the open sea and like tropical fun.
Maybe because you're on the ocean.
Yeah, the word ocean was enough.
Oh, right. That's probably why. I just cracked the code. I've seriously always wondered. So
did you also mention Ocean's 11?
I did. in our cabin, they were playing Ocean's 11 on loop on that cruise channel.
I would love if like everything you said was like an ocean, something ocean.
And then I took a break from my job at OSHA to. And then I tried to put an N somewhere at the end of it. My boss, Anderson, let me take the day off from OSHA to go on this cruise.
My boss at OSHA in Anderson.
There you go. It's connected now. Anyway, so I'm like, God, that was horrible. And I had like that moment that I feel like people talk about a lot, where you're driving home and you're like, I don't deserve to be out here. Like, you should be ashamed of yourself. But I ended up getting a call back, and I was really excited. One of my first callbacks ever. And I was like, well, I must have done something right. So go back for the callback. Huge line of people, which kind of threw me off because I was like, oh, I thought there'd be less people because it's the round 2, so they
cut 4 people.
Yeah, exactly. Four out of the 400. So yeah. 396 people were there, which gave me time to think, because I had a long wait before I went in, and I was like, what did you do that made you get called back? I was like, oh, I know, you did something that made you stand out. Nobody else probably referenced like a 1980s pop icon.
Oh no.
So yeah. So I go in finally, and it's like typical of callbacks, I guess. It's like everybody's there, the entire ad agency, writers, producer, everything.
The writers. The ones who came up with the loose idea.
The ones who wrote this great script. And so I sit back at the table, and I'm like, okay, man, let's knock this out of the park. And they're like, all right, just do what you did at the first round, and we'll play with it. And so we start off, and I'm like, oh, guys, I couldn't believe it. I got on this cruise from this beer company, and get on the cruise, sailing through the sea, and it's a beautiful day. And who should come on the PA system over the cruise but Billy Ocean? Man, he's the best. Do you remember his hits? There'll be sad songs to make you cry. Color of Love. Caribbean Queen. Get out of my dreams. Get into my car. And it's just like a Billy Ocean themed cruise. It was incredible. So then we get to the island, and we get out on the beach, and these girls, we meet up with these chicas. I didn't say chicas, but we meet with these hot girls. And it turns out they're really big Billy Ocean fans.
Oh my God.
And one of them actually has like a Billy Ocean t-shirt that she brought with her, that she showed us in her place. It was so crazy. Like, of all the people in the world to run into, it's Billy Ocean. And as I'm starting to do this, I'm starting to feel the eyes of everyone in the room really like trained on me, and I feel like a drop of sweat go down, because there are zero laughs from the 15 people who are watching me do this. So then I'm like, so then we get to the concert, and who should appear but Billy Ocean himself came out on stage and performed some of his chart toppers from the 80s. List more Billy Ocean songs. It's I could feel like just the room imploding. And also, because the whole purpose of this commercial is like to film the reactions of people, it's like, remember, look jealous of your friend who had this amazing trip. And these 3 people are sitting around me like, what the fuck are you talking about? And they're supposed to be like, this asshole on this great cruise. And they're like, half of the 3, 1.5, all 3 of them probably don't know who Billy Ocean is. Like, it's just so weird. So then finally it's like, I'm like, I have to do something to pull this out of the fire. So the last beat is like, did you get back on the cruise and go home? And I'm like, and then on the cruise, on the way back to the mainland, the girl with the Billy Ocean shirt, like, she was really hot, but we had this moment where we just kind of stopped and looked at each other. And I hear this writer go, and I go, and we just really like looked at each other, like not as man to woman or like, you know,
No.
but like people to people. And like we really just saw like I think what soulmates see in each other. And that woman ended up becoming my wife.
Oh, no.
And they stopped rolling. And this also was supposed to, I think this was supposed to be like 20 seconds. And at this point, it was like pushing 2 minutes, which is like an eternity if it's supposed to be half a minute. And the room is just a vacuum. And this woman who's sort of running it is like, okay, Terry, why don't you try telling the story this time?
My
I'm like, oh no! And then like they roll the camera over to him, and then they're like, Ben, just try to do what the others are doing. Just look jealous at his story. And he's like, oh man, like we got on this boat and it was huge, and there were these babes, and like the writers are like, oh my God. And I'm just sitting there like nodding, like trying to like be like, yeah, I'm jealous. Yeah, I'm in this scene, and the whole time I'm like, you fucking idiot. It was insanity.
Well, you did everything that a beer commercial should never do. You mentioned a celebrity that doesn't exist anymore.
Yep.
You mentioned like not just like a hot chick, but like a woman that you recognize not as like an object of sexual attraction, but a woman that you see as a person, and then you married her. That's like the things that you never see happening in a beer commercial.
Never ever, especially one where it's like, we're taking you to Party Island.
Yeah. It's never like, hey guys, let's go drink some Bud Lights and find some chicks we want to be with forever. You know,
I thought that might pull it out of the Billy Ocean fire, but it just was I probably should have stuck with the theme, because it went from like bad to worse to just like, I'm pretty sure they stopped recording like in the middle of that last beat,
and they just watched you. They watched you to see you like burn and slowly disintegrate in Earth's atmosphere.
Can you imagine the disclaimer at the end of that commercial? It's like, this beer company does not claim that you will get married after drinking this beer, though you may.
Every man on the planet would stop drinking whatever beer you were selling.
I had like a different story I was going to tell you guys, but then when Daniel walked in this like 70s paisley shirt, this is the outfit of my grandfather in like old pictures.
Oh, really?
And which is interesting because I do have like a pretty kooky funeral story.
Oh boy, nothing.
Guys, buckle up.
Nothing says comedy like 80s icons and funeral stories.
Hang on to your cruise ship seat and crank up "Get Out of My Dreams."
I hope there's chicas.
But are there chicas in this funeral story?
It depends what you're gonna describe as a chica. I'm gonna go with no, but I'll show you some pictures of my cousins after, and I'll let you decide, I guess.
Nice.
Chica? Definitely not a chica.
Oh man,
that's great. That's chica or not chica.com, which went under in 97.
It was a game show that was destined to fail.
A game show and 30 minutes of that.
Yeah.
Chica or not chica?
It was Wayne Brady hosting.
I'm sorry, Aaron. We're walking all over the intro.
It's fine. I'm just really thinking about this now, and it's really getting me,
getting me down.
The only reason why I even bring this story up, because it ended up being like one of those times in my life that I would have assumed it was gonna be like the saddest day of my life, but it like turned into easily like a top 3 day of like
top 3 days.
Just
great.
Just like laughter and like, I mean, it wasn't even so much like a celebration of his life. It was just everything that happened was like, it was like run by like Laurel and Hardy, like just so, for an even older reference than Frank Ocean. Thank you. So, I mean, long story short, he died like too young type of thing. He was only like in his mid 70s or early 70s, and he was still playing tennis pretty much up until he got sick, and then it kind of happened. And this happened, I think it was 2005, not that it really is important, but my sister and I were back in where my mom lives now, in like a small town in Iowa. We got the phone call. My mom comes down the basement. We have got to go. Like, it's over Christmas too, so like it was like Christmas Eve when we got the call, and then we were going to leave to go to the funeral on the 26th. So it was a very like odd Christmas too, because it obviously was my mom's father and all this stuff. And
I can imagine.
so fast forward, we're now in Champaign-Urbana, which is in Illinois, where the University of Illinois is, where my grandpa had worked. And he was actually working up until that point, really. So, and he like was playing tennis like on their courts and like all this stuff, and it was like where I grew up and learned how to play tennis and stuff. So it was a lot of fun to be back, also just to kind of see it. And all my relatives or family, we have a very small family on both sides, and it only ends up being like 8 people like in the family on that side. And so it's my aunt and uncle, my grandfather's son, and then his wife. Then my mom's the middle child and her younger sister. And then there's like 2 sets of cousins on each side, or each family. And kind of how it kind of started off, my sister and I are a weird bunch, and we were going to try to make
bunch of 2.
A big old bunch.
And we were going to try to make it not as bad as it was kind of our goal, but we had already like gone through like this crazy hassle of me trying to find a suit because I didn't own one, but like it was like the first funeral I'd like really ever been to, kind of. And so we had like rush and like find, and there of course it's like the day after Christmas, and you can imagine it was just a real mess. And
the suit sections of Sears were just a husk of picked over pieces.
Those people get those gift cards and then they just go shopping for suits the next day.
Number one priority, suit sales.
And maybe they're getting ready for New Year's. Who knows?
I would say, not to disrespect your family, but you could have just worn like what you wore to a junior high dance, or like to church, probably like a button-up shirt and some slacks.
Part of the problem was, since I was home from college, I didn't have any of my like dress clothes with me.
Oh, this is college. Oh, 2005.
Yeah.
I just imagine you in high school. That's why I said junior high dance. I see. Okay, so
I would
you just
love if he did show up in his junior high clothes, though.
Guys are real tight.
So your stuff was at college.
Yeah, my stuff was. We didn't really have time to go, so we had to
makes
do the whole
much
thing.
more sense.
Yeah, I should have explained that.
I'm just sitting here having Billy Ocean songs play on loop in my head. I'm not listening to a word you're saying.
I'm pretty sure I said Frank Ocean, which is actually a very modern.
You did.
Ocean.
I didn't want to call it out because I wanted to keep the momentum.
I don't even know who Billy Ocean is, guys. So I just have to relate to who I know.
After this podcast, we're gonna have a little 101.
Oh yeah.
And so my grandparents were very religious, like they were still very active in the church, and my sister and I are not at all. So that was already like a weird thing where we're like going back to this church that we hated growing up because it was like the place we had to go to on Sundays, and it was annoying for us. And and the guy who was presiding over the funeral, I don't know what that title is called, but the priest, maybe he
like a pastor.
Yeah, pastor. Sure.
Okay.
Officiator.
He knew my grandpa really well.
Oh, okay.
So that was like the one good thing, because I had actually been to a different funeral, and they clearly had no idea who who they were talking about.
Awful.
It was
it's
complete
worst,
lies,
isn't it?
And
he was a good man.
So how it all started was like the kind of important things to know at this point were that my uncle, who was the oldest, was like inconsolable, like very, and my mom was like keeping it together pretty well, and then I can't really remember how her sister was, but I'm sure kind of the same as my mom. And then the uncle's wife was like more like my mom, like kind of keeping together, like, and all of us cousins were just kind of like, we're there. It wasn't like so sad.
Yeah.
We knew it was coming for too long, was the other thing.
Right.
So that was kind of the mindset of everyone. And so my sister and I are in the second row, right behind my grandma and my uncle, who were in the front row, like first pew. And what if you're familiar with like church cadence, there's like a duh,
Very familiar.
duh, and then like there's a pauses at very obvious times, and like it's very droning on. But what happened was my grandma and uncle being in the first row, I guess they couldn't really hear everyone else, but there was like this very long pause that like somehow everyone seemed to know. They continued singing this like very odd like line that like was supposed to come in like seconds later. And so all of a sudden there was like this duet in the front row, and I look at my sister and she goes, it was one of those moments where like only a brother and sister, it's like we knew we were not going to be we're not going to get through this without laughing.
You're not going to be okay, man.
Because that was, I mean, it was just so funny to us that like it was so awkward, and like it was her husband and like his father, like that funeral, and it's like, oh man, they blew it. Like, they're one shot. And,
Guys, you blew it.
and my aunt looked at us and she's like, guys, but she knew it was funny too. And so they kept kind of singing ahead of everyone, which was also very weird. And then, so that kind of like set the mood for what was about to happen. And a quick background on my sister. She's just a very interesting person. She calls herself Critter Jones. She loves animals. She used to be vegan. She used to be a raw foodist. Now she's a vegetarian. That's really all you need to know. She's like a free spirit.
Critter.
Great. And
And if I may, one quick addition to the critter description that I think also helps you create a picture of her. When she was in high school, you would say
right.
like a goth.
Oh, absolutely. 100% goth.
So like in addition to that, she turned into this person who loves raw food and like this free spirit type, but then also still somewhat influenced by like Nine Inch Nails in terms of like style and everything. So
right. It's like
she's a badass in addition to all that stuff, and very interesting. A very cool person.
Very interesting hybrid is what she is.
Yes.
Like everything that's kind of come to her life. Like, it's like she moved around a lot. She was like in Hawaii where she lived in a cave for a while. She was in Florida where she like
my God.
I'm pretty sure she like had like a book racket where she was somehow selling books for like higher profit margins. It was just insane.
Your sister is like a supervillain waiting for her origin story. She like has all these like cool things, and she's just like every time she's waiting for that one thing to happen.
They just need to make one of her situations radioactive, just so she can get her powers.
She lived in a cave, and she was super goth. And people call her Critter Jones.
Talk to animals.
Yeah,
they can't talk back yet.
Or maybe it's yeah.
So
you and Critter,
we're
in Pew 2.
Pew 2 really busting up already, and then the pastor goes into this like, who was Jack Steger, and he's like I knew him really well, but like who?
Wait, Jack Steger is your grandfather, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And so he starts explaining like how he knew, but he's like, who better to know them than the family? And then like he kind of introduces the family and who they are to him. So he's like, obviously my grandma was first, and then it's like and I think maybe he had like one sister or a brother still alive as well, but I don't think they could make it, so they just kind of briefly went over him. And then it went to my uncle, and it was this like real standard, like who he was, like where he worked currently and where he lived. And he's like, and his wife, my aunt, like what she did and like her story about real short stuff. But then it gets to this point where they described my cousin Kelsey, and they said where she went to school. Now the only reason why that was interesting is because we were like, oh, I wonder if they're going to say that about everyone. And then they said it to my younger cousin Danny and where he was going to school, like for college. And I look at my sister and I go, well, what are they going to say for you?
Oh, no.
Because she wasn't in school. She didn't really have a job. She was just like a free spirit.
Between
and like
caves at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. Like it really got us like thinking about like anticipating what this person was going to say, and also who he contacted to get this information.
Oh, I love the idea.
Because if it's my mom,
right,
then it's like a completely different thing than if it's my grandma. And if it's not my grandma, like if it's her herself, then it's like really crazy. But my sister obviously didn't know, so she didn't know what he was going to say, and so he goes into my mom, and then he says, and her real name's Sarah, so he's like, and Anne's oldest daughter, Sarah. And she lives in Portland. And like you could see he was like reading this like almost for the first time. It's like, and she lives in Portland and she saves animals. And it was like this really weird beat where I lost it. And it was to the point where I was laughing so hard I had to like make it look like I was crying. So I'm like, hands are covering my face, and I'm going,
and that's what broke you in the entire ceremony.
Oh yeah, and
man,
and my sister is losing it, and my aunt is like, we thought she was gonna be yelling at us, but she was like banging her knee just like the rest of us, and it was so funny. And then there was a quick second where we like almost got together, and then he said my name was Leroy instead of Lee, and Leroy got me going even harder. And there was a moment where my grandma looked behind us, and we're like, we have to go. Like we're gonna have to leave here. And it will make sense. We'll tell everyone that we're crying. But like there was a door. My sister and I quickly like, we need to get to that door because we can't do this. And like we don't even remember him describing my cousin, Shannon, because she was kind of in the same boat as my sister, where like she was like between, like she was living in Vegas kind of and not really doing anything. So like it was just, everything about it was just like too much to handle. And it was this laugh riot. It was what it was. and at one point, we really did, like, that kind of ended, and it was like a good 15 minutes later, though, and we're still, like, huffing and puffing, laughing. And then there was the pastor was like, oh, and he was going to, what he was saying was, Jack's son, or not, he did not, so my grandpa's son's name was John, but also my grandpa's best friend's name was John. So the pastor like raises his hand out, just in general, and he goes, I understand that that John was very close to Jack and has a few words to say about him. And at this moment, I knew that my uncle was going to think that he was talking about him, but everyone else knew it was the best friend. So when he just like generally put his hand out, he like, it looked like he was motioning to my uncle, but my uncle had been like devastatingly crying this entire time. And then he was like being put on the spot to talk. So he stands up and you hear a, ooh. And then he realizes after like 2 steps, he looks around and the other John is like just standing up because he's a little bit older. And then they make eye contact. And then the pastor's like, it appears that Jack's son has some words to say too.
Oh no!
And
what a goof!
And he's like,
what a mix-up!
Me? And I was like, sit down, sit down, sit down. And my sister's like, he's just gonna go up there.
Man!
So he goes up there, and it was just like a really like sad, interesting moment because we knew he shouldn't be speaking right now, but at the same time, like he was almost being forced to by this pastor. And so all he could really muster up was this thing, how when my uncle was younger and like a teenager, I guess, my grandpa would always make time to go play catch with him, and like he fights to get through this one sentence. It took like a full minute for him to say that.
Oh no!
And he's like, I guess that's it. And he slowly sits down. Then the pastor gets back up, not like phased at all, and he's like, now let's hear what John has to say.
Oh, no.
And now John's like already, he comes flying up there, and he's like, I've known Jack for years, and me and him played tennis. And it was like the happiest story of like just them getting along great. But this also was like, put my sister and I in hysterics because like the way that guy was like so prepared, and like he just forced my
the
uncle.
sheer juxtaposition of the Johns.
So it finally ended, and we were leaving, and like my sister and I were like recapping with my cousins like all the very funny things that were happening. My cousin's like, he called you Leroy. That's like, what a dumb name. And then like, we're just so in love with the fact that my sister saved animals because we didn't know what every other old person thought that meant. Was this like, is she a superhero? Is she are they constantly in danger? Like, how are they being saved by her? And that's like the other thing is like, I don't really know what they meant by that because she was like pro animal, but it's not like she's like giving kittens mouth to mouth on a daily basis or anything.
She's not like an eco-terrorist breaking into zoos, like releasing gorillas into the city.
Free. I would much rather that than being like, oh, and we have Curtis, who goes to the University of Nebraska. Like, if someone were to say something about me, I'd always prefer it to be they save anything at all over University of this or whatever.
And side note, my grandpa had been cremated. And actually, there's this really funny thing. Like, I'll get into it some other time, but I'm so afraid of death. And 10 years before, when I was like 14, 13, my grandparents had taken me to their funeral plot, and they were like, see that, Aaron? That's where we'll be buried someday. And I was like, well, that's the creepiest thing. And that haunted me for many years. And then it was really weird to see that my grandpa was being cremated, but then there was like reasons outside. It was like because he went so much earlier than he should have. That type of thing. I was like, okay, that makes sense. So that's like the last important bit of information you need to know for what happened next. So after we recapped it, my grandmother let us know that my grandpa's wishes were to be like spread over this field that him and my grandma used to take walks on. It was right outside of their house. So like it was a few, like, it doesn't really matter where it is, but it was a park near where they lived. And so it was like this really windy December day, gloomy, and like luckily there wasn't any snow on the ground or anything. Mm-hmm. So because like, otherwise I don't know if my grandma would have been able to walk on it because of the ice and stuff. So she's holding the ashes, and we're walking behind her on this path, and we finally get to the area where like there was like a bench I presume they would often sit at. This is all so sad. But because of the wind, when my grandma started like to spread the ashes, it really just went everywhere in our faces. And it was like this really, really bizarre, like, that was like her hand was throwing out ashes, and then it was like going into her face and like going on to us, and it was like this really weird moment where that should not have been the way. Like, she should have been throwing with the wind instead of into it. And
you giving her notes,
and no one turned her around or anything.
Just
if it was the other way, it was like trees, where like the other, like the way she was throwing was like the park, and it's like, oh, I wish there would have been like cement somewhere else for her to walk.
Can I be honest? Somebody really needed to take the reins in this funeral. Tell those women to stop singing early. Tell John to sit down. Tell grandmother to turn around. You guys needed a leader just to keep this thing on track.
Just a captain.
Funeral captain.
A funeral captain.
What? Save animals? Hang on.
That can't be.
She went to community college too. Let's find out
tell
where.
Us where did you go? Now we know. Thank you, people.
Please omit saved animals from your memories.
His name's not Leroy.
Who did the fact checking?
I'm imagining this man's uniform and cap he's wearing during this entire process.
So at the very end of all this, we like come in like 2 cars, and my uncle said, I think I'm just going to take mom, drive her. So if you guys can all pile in the van. And we're like, oh, absolutely, absolutely. So my grandma, we're like talking to my uncle above the car, and like they had just gotten their car, like it was a new car, I guess. And as my grandma's entering the passenger seat, she, like, I don't know how she didn't know, but she's like, what is this? And like begins to dust herself off into my uncle's car.
No.
Forever with him.
And my uncle was just like, oh no. And my sister and I like closing the sliding door on the van, like cackling even more. We're like,
man.
So I was like, how odd is that? It's like, I need someone to vacuum out my father's ashes from my new car before I can drive this any longer.
You can't just go to like any old car wash for that. That's devastating. Like, imagine just going to like the corner car wash and just like watching some like 26-year-old dude vacuuming your dad's ashes out of your car,
and it's going into some canister with hair and
like French fries and like just grossness.
No.
Yeah.
Hey, do you want to keep this or something? He's like tearing up in that.
No,
it's fine.
It's fine. It's fine. Just get it out of here.
Okay.
You know, this was said on another podcast, but I feel like that entire story, it comprises just a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode. And as you're sliding the van door shut, it's like bum 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 bum. Credits rolling over a man vacuuming your grandfather's ashes.
Man.
I don't know. It was crazy and sad. I feel very bad for your family.
Oh no! Well, that was the thing. Like, we look back on that day, and it was like such a happy.
Everybody laughs.
was
Well,
like,
that's good. That's
and
good.
it was nothing that was so like insulting. I guess like no one's like, oh, it didn't go wrong. It was just like funny little goofs that like happened to make it a little funny.
I would love if that were my funeral. Mm-hmm. Like, people are just having a ball.
Yeah, everybody laughing.
But it's also really sad. Like, people still feel bad that I'm gone.
Well, you can't have your cake and eat it too.
But at his funeral, there
apparently.
will
What
be
are the other-
cake.
Yeah, there will be plenty of cake that I can't eat.
You'll be in the ground.
Well, I don't have any funeral stories.
Oh, am I the only one? Guys, bummer.
What if Daniel and I had never been to a funeral before? We'd never lost anyone in our lives.
I've never been around death. Nor I think it's sort of like one of those things where if you see it happen or you see it or anything, then it can happen to you. So I'd steer clear of it. No, I have an audition story.
Lay it on us.
But it is sort of that like worst audition, and it made me think of this because you were talking about alcoholic beverages. I had an audition for, and I will say the name of the product.
Oh,
because it's
brave
important.
man.
I had an audition for Newcastle beer. And I went through and I did the first run, and the whole bit was that you were sitting in the back of a cab while this cab driver drove around and yelled at people on the street with this giant megaphone on the top of his car. And he basically like yelled at them, trying to get them to try this new like Newcastle drink or whatever. Really simple, right? And then we're just like these everyday people who are pretending, you know, like we just came out of the bar and he picked us up and he's taking us to wherever we want to go.
And it's the 70s, so you're perfect.
And it's 1974.
It's a period piece.
And so I fit perfectly. No, so we were just hanging out, and I went through the first run, and I was like, awesome, this is easy. Because it's one of those where I just had to sit there, right?
Yeah.
It was like, oh, and then I had to do those little reactions of like, oh, yeah, we just came from the bar, blah, 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 you know? So I go through the first one and get the call back, and I'm like, oh, cool, great, I have a call back for this. And it was a little non-union thing, so it was like, I think it maybe paid like $1,000 or $2,000. No chump change.
Yeah,
but,
you can do something with that.
But it was good. So my worst thing that I could have ever done though was the night before I was trying to hang out with some people and a few plans fell through, and so I decided that maybe, just maybe, I'd hang out by myself. I'll have a few drinks. I'll relax. I'll just hang out by myself. All of my roommates were gone for some reason. So I went to
a mutual funeral in the
I wasn't invited to it, and I didn't want to go anyway. So I went to the local grocery store and I bought myself a bottle of wine. So I was like, I'm just gonna have a few glasses of wine and maybe watch a movie or something. And
just unwind after a day. Yeah.
And that's sort of what it was. I was just gonna unwind,
nice night
and hang out.
Yeah.
So I get home and I'm like, you know, I pour myself a glass of wine and I'm scrolling through Netflix or HBO Go or something, trying to find some movie that I want to watch. And I come across Man on Fire with Denzel Washington and Dakota Fanning.
You alone with that movie and a bottle of wine.
and Crazy Bear.
Let me tell you something. I'm a huge Denzel Washington fan, and to this day I can't tell you why. There's just something about Denzel Washington that just like I'll watch any movie that guy's in, no matter how terrible it is. I just want to see that guy doing whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that was one of those movies where like, I like this movie. It's gritty. It's good. And I don't have anything else to do. So I got my bottle of wine and I, poured a glass and I started watching this movie. And before I know it, I'm like 3 glasses in. Before I know it, the bottle's gone, right? And I was like, you know what? I'm okay. Like, I'm not even really that drunk right now. And that's when you know that you're on a downward slope. But to me, I was just so enthralled with Man on Fire that I wasn't.
And his own alcoholic.
And that's what I think that may have been what it was.
Are you trying to say that this movie and Denzel's character enabled you?
I'm not an alcoholic whatsoever. I rarely ever drink.
Always say.
But I think maybe that's what it was, that he kept pouring these drinks in the movie, and I just kept pouring drinks for myself.
Why not? Yeah, Denzel can do it.
So I did the worst possible thing ever after that, which was after drinking an entire bottle of wine, I paused my Netflix movie, and I walked to the freezer, and I said, there's this watermelon vodka that no one has like drank since we've moved into this apartment. And I'm going to drink it now because no one else is. So I go back and I start pouring glasses of watermelon vodka. And I was like totaled. Like I was beyond repair, hammered drunk.
Oh my God.
And I knew that, and like there's like a point when you're drunk and you just know that you're too drunk. And I was by myself. So it was okay to be that drunk.
Yeah.
When you like start narrating your own life,
right?
That's when you know that you're way too drunk. You're like, I'm gonna go to the bathroom right now.
To an empty room.
To an empty room. No one's
just
there.
Announcing.
You're just drunk and you're talking to whoever. And I'm gonna go use the bathroom, and then I'm gonna watch the rest of Man on Fire. Like that's like I knew I was hammered at this point. So. I don't even remember if I finished this movie. And keep in mind, this is only 2.5 hours. So I drank a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
And probably a few glasses of Smirnoff vodka.
Can we talk
watermelon?
Can we talk glass real quick? Like, what's a glass of that?
Like a tumbler. I had like a couple fingers each time.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oof.
So it was rough.
Ooh, yikes.
Really bad. And I'm not the type of person to do that at all.
Well, it's interesting. As you're telling this, I thought it was, for a moment, I was like, it might go that way where he gets really drunk. But I was like, but Daniel doesn't really drink.
I'm not a big drinker at all. I just was watching this. I got so into it.
You just got into the character and like the grittiness of the movie.
And I think I was just having a good time.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? Everyone's doing something tonight. I'm going to have fun.
Yeah, man.
And I just got trashed. Just like I could not handle myself. So eventually I get too tired to do anything. And so I narrate to myself, I'm going to go to bed now, and I go and I lay down. And about an hour later, I'm spinning and I'm vomiting. And then 7 hours later, I wake up with the worst hangover of my entire life.
Man.
Now, flash forward. We're going to a commercial callback for a beer brand, Newcastle. So I get there, and I'm just wrecked at this point. Like my face is white. I can't even I can walk, and I'm not like drunk or anything. I just have
can walk.
I have like this headache that will not. Go away. I can't hear anyone talk, really. It's just like, And so I get into the room, and I'm sitting there, and they get the guy who's driving the taxi cab around, and he's yelling at people or whatever. And he sits down, and he goes, we get in the car we're coming out of a pub or whatever, and the guy's like, oh, you guys just come from a bar? Oh, yeah. You guys have a few drinks? Yeah, we had a great time. Oh, what were you guys drinking in there? And I said, oh, I just had a bunch of Guinness. And then my face turned red because I realized that I was in a Newcastle commercial callback. And then there's, these 15 people who all work for Newcastle, who were like really enjoying what I was doing. They were like, this guy looks like he drinks a lot. And then like the whole room, like you said, like a vacuum.
Yeah, they just shut down.
And I imploded on myself. I decided at that moment it wasn't even worth really continuing this commercial callback. I had screwed it up beyond repair at this point. So like anytime that a question was asked, I just turned to my scene partner and was just like, "You take it." And I'll, oh man, I still have not been back to that office, that casting office. But I will say this one thing. A couple months later, I was really excited to find out the person that I went in with was a friend of mine, and I knew her. Mm-hmm. And I saw on Facebook they were advertising this commercial, mm-hmm. and she got booked for it. And it made me so happy.
You helped that happen.
I was such a screw up in this commercial that it made her look so incredibly good for recovering from this guy who can't hear anything and can't. It's like there's like these like fuzzy dots everywhere. This man who's too hungover for his life, and she handled it like a pro, and she booked it, and it made me so happy to see that.
Oh, that's good. Something good came out of it, kind of like that funeral.
Yeah. Or like Man on Fire.
Yeah.
Actually,
right.
Well,
if you think about it, you were Denzel Washington and she was Dakota Fanning.
You saved her.
Oh.
It was sort of like a metaphor for that commercial callback. Yeah. Was that whole movie.
Now I really want to blow your mind. Man on Fire is a remake of the original Man on Fire, which was a film from the 1970s.
Is it really?
I think so.
When it's not, it's
hang on.
Oh, it's not.
It's 1969, like December of 1969. So it doesn't count.
Most people would have watched it in the 70s. I guess we could.
What if that was how I tried to salvage this? Like you could rent it in the 70s, though. Actually, I don't think video rental stores were around in the 70s. Hang on, Man on Fire.
Well, they didn't have VHS in the 70s, did they?
No, that you couldn't rent movies in
You'd
the
have
70s.
to get like a spool.
Yeah.
People rented... Yeah, 1987, so never mind.
Oh, can I blow your mind
no.
right now?
And I'm sorry. Man on Fire, 2004, Man on Fire, 1987. Those are connected. I think the 2004 is the remake of the 1987. There is also Man on Fire from 1957 and A Man on Fire from 1967. So
no matter what.
No, nothing in the 70s.
Can I blow your mind, though?
Yeah.
I was born in 1987.
Hey, hey, there
that
you
didn't
go.
quite blow anyone's mind.
No, that actually...
But it was a happy coincidence.
It popped. It popped it.
It was something to talk about.
It made it snap a little. Oh my God. Well, God, Daniel, this is so much fun. Thank you for coming.
It was a real blast.
This is awesome. Do you have a Twitter account or anything you want to talk about that's coming up?
I have a Twitter account that I rarely update.
Okay.
It's at Daniel S. Robbins.
Okay. What's the S stand for?
Scott, my middle name.
Great.
But I also just started a YouTube channel with
fun.
My writing partner and buddy from the Groundlings, Tom Fonz. It's just, you can go on and look up Majestic Idiots.
Oh, I saw your hipster wedding planner thing. I forgot to tell you.
Right.
That was really funny.
I saw that as well.
Thanks.
Yeah,
we
fantastic.
We just posted our first video last week. We'll post another one this week, and we're going to continue filming and
awesome.
stuff like that. So check it out.
Super funny. Definitely do that. You can also follow this podcast on Twitter at ChrenBen's. That's ChrenBens. You can also follow Aaron's Twitter, which is very funny, at Chrennen, ChrenEnen. You can also follow me at White Bathrobe, which is spelled like I was hanging out with some chicas and we were all wearing white bathrobes.
But without the S.
Oh, right. Let me hang on.
You have to rephrase that.
Can we
Does
edit
that
this out?
S also stand for Scott?
I was
Yes.
with a bunch of chicas and we were all wearing one large white bathrobe.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
That describes it perfectly.
Well, thanks for coming by.
Thanks for having me, guys. I had a blast.